Welcome back, everybody. As many people are enjoying the major update that we've had, there's a lot of things that were either left out of the patch notes or were kind of vague. So let's talk about some of the things that we know so far. And if you know something that's not included in this video, please leave it in the comments so that others may benefit from it as well. First off, I'm just going to identify some gear that I have because I'm still continuing to get a ton of questions from people about what piece they should use and when. And before we get into that, I want to mention something that was really vague. There was some description in the patch notes about you can only use one item per skill. Well, we've started to learn that that's not really true. And I'm going to scroll down here, and hopefully it's not too difficult to see with the screen being cut off with my camera. But this is Desolatory, and this is going to give the Molten Golem for Necros. This pretty common aspect or essence. So also I'm going to use a shield here, which is called Dominance from Dust, and this is going to cause the golem to split into two smaller golems when it dies. Now this is really easy to test. Both of these obviously affect the golem. I can summon a golem. We can in fact see that it's molten, and as I'm talking, we'll see that this is going to split into two as well. Another thing that we can talk about in the meantime here is real briefly the new 5-star gem, and that is somewhere in my inventory. Hopefully I get it there in time. The Starfire Shard. This chance to deal damage really high to proc and does a large amount of damage. On top of that, there's an unlisted knockback effect. So this gem is in fact very, very strong. Knockbacks, as many people know, are not affected by potency and resistance. So that makes that gem very star for players of any resonance. Now here you can see that the golem has in fact split into two. So we know that both of those essences are in fact affecting the same skill. Now if I go into Inherit real quick and swap off of this Wraith Form Essence, and I'm going to put on the Poison Golem just because I think it's easier to see, and I'm going to leave the Molten Golem on as well. So I now have Molten Golem in the top slot, Poison Golem in the bottom slot, and when I summon a Golem, well, I'm not going to get two. In fact, I'm just going to get the Poison Golem now. So it's overriding that Molten Golem. So in this situation, I can only have one of those aspects affecting the golem. So in fact the wording was really vague, and we now kind of need to go through trial and error to see what it can do. A lot of this is fairly logical. I knew I wasn't going to get a molten and a poison golem at the same time, and I kind of knew that I would be likely to get it to split into two. Same thing I've been able to do with the Wraith Form Essences. If there are things that don't overlap in a certain manner, and again, if you're unsure, just trial and error it, okay? It's really easy stuff to test. And again, you'll see that I will still get the two poison golems. So that's what I want to cover for the essences so far. And let's talk about the other gems. Mother's Lament, the 2-star gem, has also proven to be very strong. We kind of knew that going in. So this is another one to look out for players of any resonance. I am currently leveling up. I am getting some help on testing some things. I didn't forget about testing it. Okay, there's just been so much to do that we are yet to level up a 10-star me or the other individual that is going to help me with some of this testing. So we're still going to cover that, absolutely, and that's probably enough to warrant its own video. Same with the Starfire Shard. I will get somebody, and I have somebody that's leveling up for this as well, and I will get some testing for this so we can see these effects. And as I mentioned, very, very powerful because it has that unlisted knockback effect. Now, a lot of players have gotten to 800 and started to unlock this Apothecary Paragon tree, right? And you're going to go in here, and hopefully if you're following along, you should be doing the damage and the life and kind of ignoring the rest of the tree. In my case, I took this node to get potency because I want to stack that. However, if you're strong enough or you're able to get a carry and you can clear all of the new raids or the 2 new raids that come out for the Heliquary bosses, well, there's kind of an error here, and I don't know if this is intended or not, but you can actually unlock Weaver, which means at that point you may want to respec again and again take the life and the damage. In this case, I'm still stacking potency, so I've gone into the armor. I'm going to go forward, take this node, and then I'll take the last potency node, and I've got all the other ones. So keep this in mind. If you are looking for stuff in this node, whether it be the life and the damage or potency, resistance here, or I'm sorry, potency up here, but armor pen down here. So if you're looking for any of those things, you might be able to get a carry to unlock this as well. So keep an eye out for that, or ask friends if you have them and so forth. That's not going to apply to everybody, but I did want to mention that you can actually unlock that early despite the difficulty being very far away. Another thing that I've gotten many questions on, and I can see how this could confuse players, especially if you don't stay up to date with all of the notes or you're more casual, don't log on as much, is what's happening to the Server Paragon level. Well, Server Paragon was set to 800, okay? And every Monday at the server reset, this is going to go up 10, meaning tomorrow from when this video airs, it's just going to be boosted by another 10, and it will stay there all week. And this is going to happen. So this means that we have a cadence for how the difficulty is going to unlock, right? We're going to have exactly 10 weeks before we get to 900, and players will be able to get there slightly early, right? You can still push past the Paragon, the server Paragon level. So there are some tricks to kind of boost that further, which another topic and so forth. But you know that roughly every 10 weeks, or fairly close to that, depending on how quickly you level, you're going to be getting the next difficulty. So we're already in Infernal 1, and we have, in my case, about 90 levels before the next one. So I know that when I'm going to hit that, I can basically plan for the day and save enough experience and so forth for the exact time I want to hit it, and when I should start pre-farming if you're interested in that as well. A lot of people have been looking to get wisps and so forth since we kind of got thrown into this difficulty. Remember, we still do have the boosted dungeons, and I do not have any confirmation on this, but I have heard that these boosted dungeons, since the update, have a dramatically better drop rate for set pieces than the non-boosted dungeons. Now, this used to really not matter. A lot of people just ignored them. And again, I do not have any confirmation. This could just be bias, but multiple people telling me that the boosted dungeons have really been doing well. And hopefully we can get some data on that and kind of confirm that one way or another. So let's take a look at some of this gear I identified. And first thing, the combat rating on each piece. The ceiling for this appears to increase by 2 per Paragon level of your character. Again, not confirmed, but this seems to be the data that we're collecting from individuals that are contributing. And the max combat rating can increase by 2 per level of your character, meaning the higher Paragon level you get, the more chance that you'll get an item with higher combat rating. So what does this mean? Well, this is enormous, really, because if you're a more casual player or somebody that's kind of struggled in the past, where you've farmed for a long time, and you say, I never get pieces with combat rating, I never get an upgrade. Well, this is going to be totally different because you can now get combat rating from any of these pieces, right? They always had combat rating, but you see they're fairly well rolled. So just by getting legendary items to drop, you're probably going to be able to keep up with combat rating a lot more easy. So what the real RNG here is going to be on these attributes as well as the magic affixes. And we've touched upon this a little bit before, but in general, you'll want to stack combat rating until you meet the threshold, whether it be for the difficulty, the raid boss, the dungeons. And remember that dungeons have a different combat rating than the open world. So you're going to end up most likely just utilizing many pieces in the same slot. And this is kind of an inventory and stash nightmare, unless you go about it a more casual route and just do one piece for everything. However, if you really want to min-max this, there's still going to be a lot going on. We also need to consider that triple stats no longer have an enormous advantage over double stats. In fact, for certain content, it may be more favorable to just have a double stat. We'll see if I had any luck here in identifying one. Well, here's a piece right here that I would show. If you look at the attributes, I get nearly 500 vitality and 500 intellect just from this double stat. And that's pretty high numbers. Now, I do have a triple stat already, and you'll see that it's only 365 vitality and 367 intellect. In PvP, and although these are different slots, but if this were the same slot in PvP, I may actually choose to prefer the piece with just the higher main stats vitality and intellect, or perhaps vitality and strength if you're playing a strength class. That's just because of the sheer value that your life and damage have in that content, similar to how resonance is such a benefit. Again, you'll also want to consider these magic affixes, and just for time, we won't go ahead and go through all of the magic affixes, but you'll want to make sure that you're taking ones that are favorable for your character, your class, your build, etc. So there's just a lot more to this now, and it's going to take time for people to adjust. Probably the best part of all this is that items can now just be a normal legendary, they can be cursed gear legendary, or they can be an invocation legendary. So the curse gear is the easiest to identify. You'll see obviously it has the icon here, but on just the inventory screen itself, you'll see this noticeable trait right here. This is a legendary piece, and equipped currently I have an invocation, and that's identifiable, by the icon up here, and you see that it is slightly different, maybe difficult to tell in the video, but if you look in game as you find an invocation and a regular one, you'll notice that. In fact, if I scroll down, you'll see this has an invocation, whereas this piece will not have one. So on top of all those other things like combat rating, the attributes, the magic affixes, you also ideally are looking for curse gear or an invocation, depending on what you're trying to use for your character and your build. Last thing I want to mention is just sheer resonance numbers have gone up, and we've talked about how this has been condensed, compressed, squished, again, whichever term or label you want to put on it. And what does that mean? Well, it means that the lowest resonance players are now closer than the highest resonance players than they were before, because everything is being condensed to allow for more fair and favorable matching. And just to clarify, I have not heard any of the large or high resonance players being upset about this change. They're more upset that it was excluded from the patch notes and that it just wasn't really broadcasted that well. What we should consider here is that for very high resonance players, this may mean that stacking nothing but 5-star gems is not the best method. In fact, I've put on some extra 5-star gems down in my new slots, but I don't think this is actually the preferred way to go. I've just kind of done this for the time being because I've got so much else to do, so much farming to do, that just the sheer resonance is helping my clear speed in that regard. But I think that for certain there's some fine tuning to be done here. What I mean by that is some of these 2-star gems we've talked about, something like Fervent Fang could be good, something like Cure Sling is going to be good in, say, PvP, and we have the Mother's Lament, which is going to be strong. There's a lot of really good options here. In fact, one thing I want to show off as well is Pain Clasp, another good 2-star option, and I believe I have one here somewhere, I just forget what it looks like, is this Exigent Echo. Your block chance is increased by 10% for 6 seconds when you receive a critical hit. Now, if we think about this with some of the new things that have been added, right? We think about the Mother's Lament, which is adding critical hit chance. So this gem is actually a very strong defensive choice, and it's a 1-star. So you may get a large benefit out of this because so many people are running Mother's Lament. You can actually kind of counteract that by playing against the critical hit chance. So this gem is something to not sleep on. This is going to be very powerful for a 1-star as well. So that's all I've got for today. But keep all of those things in mind, and if you have anything that wasn't covered, please feel free to share it with everybody. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch, and have a great day.